local, one is international. But yeah, there are quite a few airports in Ukraine.
So they have destroyed the top four, looks like it.
Did we discuss Article 4 already?
Yeah, we have one. Can you go and talk about that?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Article 4 of the NATO treaty, it's invocable by any member, and it is basically a treaty of NATO that calls for militarization of NATO members if the territorial integrity or political independence of any member nation is threatened. So I pinned the tweet above. This just came out. Both Latvia and Slovakia are now invoking Article 4. They do not need any other member's permission to invoke Article 4. This is very troubling to me because this is one of the potential avenues where this could escalate to a world war if any of the other Eastern European nations see a threat to their territorial integrity as a result of Russia's occupation of Ukraine. Then the other members of NATO, by the treaty, are bound to militarize in defense of that territory. So this is, to me, troubling. But yeah, this is just coming out now. Both Latvia and Slovakia have independently invoked Article 4. They don't need both of the countries to do it, but any one country can do it. And so both of those countries are NATO members, and they are invoking Article 4 now.
Thank you, Stock Talk. And any update from the UN meeting? Is it over?
They are not on televised stream anymore.
I believe that the meeting is occurring behind closed doors right now.
Crimea, just pinning that above.
I see 2 more airports getting bombed here. No names released to here. And the number of people that's being reported 500 plus right now. But to be honest, I think it's over 1,000 already. But Ukraine just says 500 for now. I see siren going off again. I think there were 3 more bomb blasts in the capital of Ukraine right now.
This is the, I think, difficulty with these international style alliances is now there's a path for the United States to be drawn into war, which 2 weeks ago, again, and me and Jay were in large agreement on this, is why I keep referring to him, but, no one expected this to escalate into this kind of conflict. Now, invoking Article 4 of the NATO treaty has, I don't think, ever been done since it was instituted. I don't even remember when it's last been done. I think it's a relatively newer ratified article, but the point is even if it has been done in the past, it hasn't been done lately. And so this is to me a big step. And now NATO has to meet on that issue. And I think it's going to be very difficult to argue that the territorial integrity of other Eastern European nations is not compromised at this time, right? I mean, we thought Ukraine was sovereign. And in an overnight invasion now, Russia has taken key territories all over the country. I think that the implication is that other Eastern European territory is now threatened. I mean, if Putin wakes up tomorrow and decides, I want to unite the USSR, I mean, what is stopping him? At what point or how many sanctions can we institute before boots have to be put on the ground either by NATO or the UN more broadly? This is quickly developing. I mean, I'm glad we had this space because there's been so much news in the breath of one night. But yeah, I mean, I'll certainly be staying up to watch this. This is a world-shaking situation, which I think just a few weeks ago most people didn't imagine it being. But this is a full-scale war in Europe, which
it's a major fault line.
Yeah, good. I'm not sure if you're just going to leave your spaces on all night, but I think we'll do coverage as long as we can.
Yeah, I will leave this on. I think I might not sleep for this.
Yeah, leave it on, I guess, and we'll be on all day tomorrow as well. So give our panels.
Yeah. What's up, Michael?
Okay, so apparently there's something happening also in Lviv, which is not good because that's basically the default location for the government during the conflict, as well as many of the children and women have been pre-evacuated to Lviv. So the fact that there's already obviously some concern there is not good news. The thing that we're going to see, and this is speculation on my part, and for those of you that know how I feel about this, we're going to see who President Biden is in the next 24 to 48 hours. We are going to find out who this American.
But again, right, the moment US attacks, it's World War III. The world will end. I don't think US does that. And Biden said US will not again engage with Russia directly. They will just impose sanctions 2 days ago. So why would he do a 180 2 days later? That would make no sense. And even now, right, his ratings are dropping every single day. If it does that, there's no way they win the midterm elections, right?
Unless NATO troops are attacked, President Biden is not going to. No, like there's no way. I agree with you, Gurgavin, that there's just no way.
I think that we are going to find out what the script is and where the rubber.
If one NATO
hits
soldier is
the road.
killed, if one NATO soldier is killed, there is a very high chance for this to escalate into a world war.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to avoid, or that's what President Biden's trying to avoid right now. Yeah,
and that means if one Polish soldier is killed, I mean, one NATO soldier dies by a Russian airstrike, and you think that NATO member is just going to say, all right, cool, one casualty, we'll step off. That's not going to happen. Because the territorial integrity of these nations is already in question. And if Russia gets a little more aggressive, I mean, I find it very difficult to believe that if Putin gets away with this, if Russia really does annex Ukraine over the course of the next few weeks and Putin gets away with it, what's stopping him from grabbing another country or two in Eastern Europe?
Yep, completely.
That's the scary thing.
Completely agree.
I actually defer on that a little bit. So if you look at what happened over the past few days, Biden was so unwilling to send American troops into the Ukraine that he actually pulled out scores of U.S. troops over the last couple weeks. That the only thing they were doing was training Ukrainian fighters. He also recently warned that he won't send U.S. troops to even evacuate Americans stuck in Ukraine, citing the risk of a clash. So those two data points, that he won't even allow U.S. troops to evacuate U.S. citizens, and he won't allow U.S. troops to even train Ukrainian troops, show how scared Biden is of making that type of a mistake of sending in, troops and actually starting a war with Russia. And on top of that, I think that he actually predicted the false flag, and he predicted a large-scale invasion already. So he had probably thought of that before he made those statements.
The benefit here, too, is if Biden and NATO can say they did everything possible to avoid the kind of catalyst that would lead to a world war, it's going to make it a lot easier for everyone else who's on the sidelines to jump in on the side of U.S. and NATO, right? So it's not going to be this thing where, Putin is clearly trying to press the advantage. He's clearly trying to provoke something.
Putin is taking advantage of the fact that he knows Biden won't do anything. And neither will Western Europe.
I don't agree with that. I don't. I think if one, I do agree with. I didn't catch your name, Stock T. I'm sorry, but I agree. If one NATO personnel is killed, then that's all that the U.S. NATO would need to engage.
I mean, that's all the reason they have, but that doesn't mean they would use that reason.
They would. I guarantee they would.
I mean, no one knows what's going to happen, but I think Putin is definitely putting the integrity of NATO at question here, and he knows that, right? He understands he has the leverage in this situation. So,
right.
Whether there's a retaliation, no one knows. But could things escalate if there was, or if NATO?
I mean, not only did we do that, we closed our embassy. Not only did we close our embassy, we moved it far into the west. And now we're considering closing that embassy as well. We're kind of showing Putin's very in a very upfront way where we stand, where Biden stands, and I think he's doing his best to take advantage of that.
I think a lot of what we are going to be talking about, it sounds like, is all speculation. So that needs to be very clear right off. But we can speculate all day on why he decided a few days ago he would talk about just sanctions and that we wouldn't invade. But a lot has changed between then and right now. And I think as long as we are just imposing economic warfare rather than sending troops there, it'll keep our troops safe and out of harm's way for the most part. But as soon as an American soldier is harmed, I think things are going to change real fast. I don't know if we will allow that to happen, but I just man, it's just such a crappy situation. War is so sad all the way around for everybody involved, and all we can do is hope for the best at this point and see what kind of retaliatory actions our government will take. And I think the G7 summit, I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to be until they meet, but they could already be meeting right now.
Anything new, special, Jeremy, Dan, Raul?
Yeah, there's a military guy who recently DM'd, and we've been DMing for about an hour. He said in regards to Article 4, he sees it more or less administrative in nature. He thinks that only certain NATO countries have probably committed a certain amount of assets, i.e. Spain and Portugal, for example, don't care as much about what's going on with Russia in a polite way versus the Baltic states who are trying to invoke Article 4. So this is a play on getting assets going, and preparing them to be ready to go / committed. So, he thinks it's more administrative in nature.
I'm talking to...
Bro, I'm seeing videos of people dying on the street of Oman in Ukraine. I don't want to share this.
No, let's not share that. I'm talking to some verified athletes, obviously professional athletes, and they have some information, but it's nothing breaking. But I guess I'll keep you guys posted.
We got a new statement from President Zelensky. He, a tweet, I should say. He said, "I continue negotiations with the leaders, received support from the Emir of Qatar. The world is with us." He just tweeted that about 10 minutes ago.
Mohammed, any updates from you? It's been a while.
I just have a few quick comments in terms of the decision of moving embassies and everything else. I think that was more to de-escalate the situation and take the legitimacy away from Putin, saying that, US is there provoking, invoking, blah, blah, blah. And sadly, it did not work well. But now, truly, now in the international community, the world community, the way they're backing the situation or backing Ukraine is mainly because there was a clear message and clear policy that this is not NATO or US invoking this war or provoking Russia, but it's the other way around. And one other comment I would like to add, in terms of Russian capability and their military capability, they do have heavy arsenals, but they do not have a lot of modernized weapons. Saying that, this is a risk, because they are now using air, sea, and land heavy artilleries. And the fear is, or the risk is, if the war spill over, or if this attack spill over to the neighboring country or neighboring countries, which is NATO member, that's a point where there is a possibility or risk of escalation. And Russia may not go directly to invade a NATO state, but to what extent these state has a tolerance to accept, if a missing fire or a missing missiles or bomb hit a capital state, hopefully not. For example, today is the National Day of Estonia. They should have celebrations, massive gathering and stuff. So these kind of risks, like if you miss, because those who are following the the Russian military capability, they know that their weapons are not precise. And, it's out to date anyway. Yes, it's massive, it's big, it's collateral, but it's not very precise. And most of the time, They're known for, huge collateral damages and missing targets and stuff. So in this case, if something like that happens, that could be possible point for potential escalation. That's my fear.
I have a list of all the Article 4 invokements for anybody that wants to know about that. It's been invoked several times, actually, so I was mistaken that hasn't been invoked recently. But most of these were, actually milder conflicts that were settled by, a much smaller intervention. So I think, you take them with a grain of salt. Obviously, this is a much more elevated security concern. But anyways, it's been invoked 4 times by Turkey in 2003 over the Iraq War, in 2012 after a Turkish military jet was shot down by Syria, and then in February 2020 when the Syrian offensive kind of escalated. So Turkey's invoked it several times. Other than that, in Eastern Europe, which is I guess where we're concerned with it, Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania, who, by the way, there's an updated list of all of the countries that are invoking Article 4. I'll pin it above in the nest. That's now an updated list of all the countries that have invoked all Article 4. So Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, and Slovakia. Back in March 2014, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland invoked it in response to Crimea. We all know how that ended up. There wasn't really much intervention there from NATO in a militaristic way. But and then in November 2021, there was basically a Belarusian ploy to have, basically an overt attack by Belarus by, sending in militarized immigrants. And it was a big conflict. And so the NATO sanctioned Belarus for that. And then most recently, it was invoked by Poland, which was the first of this list of Eastern European countries to invoke Article 4 in response to this Russia-Ukraine crisis.
Rahul, any updates? Jeremy? Special? Dan?
Nothing breaking, similar stuff that we've been talking about. I'm seeing futures. The VIX actually spiked a little bit more. It's up 11.3% now.
So 2 hours to go before the market opens, pre-market, so we should
Here's
know.
an update from Hungary. These are just diplomatic updates, but just in Hungary stands with Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. The Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Peter Szijjártó, reiterated Hungary's backing in a live video message. Apparently it's on Facebook. If anyone has it, you can see it live on Facebook. I think it's playing right now. War is the worst case scenario, he said. Diplomatic efforts of the biggest and most powerful countries had failed to prevent it. He said that Hungary discussing a coordinated response of sanctions. So you're probably going to see more and more support in terms of sanctions from countries all over Europe and across the democratic world. So we'll see what you will likely see a number of these updates.
Thank you, Special. Stock Talk, Rahul, Shala, Dan, Jeremy, Mohammed.
I'd love to hear more from Mohammed about just all the things that we need to know concerning NATO's involvement here. Like, what are you looking at next for how this escalates?
I think, I would, because the borders are so close, the countries besides Ukraine or near Ukraine are so little small in terms of its geographical location, and vulnerabilities of these countries are so high, if it's in terms of the cyber or if it's in terms of their infrastructure and dependency on energy and stuff. So yes, there is, these sanctions can have a huge impact on Putin himself. In this a harsh winter, these countries in the borders, they depend on so much energy coming from Russia. Plus, having this fear of this ongoing war in their neighborhood. And also has been using as of now. These are the fear that I'm so afraid, God forbid, if it's spilled over, then this goes out of control. In Ukraine, I'm so sorry about it. I think there might be a kind of settlement or maintaining the situation for a period of time, and then certainly, I'm sure if Afghans in Afghanistan can defeat Russians, Ukrainian can certainly do that anyway, because they have 40 million people, a major country in Europe, 600 billion GDP, and blah, 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 and a lot of weapons and military assets as well. But hopefully it never spills across the borders of Ukraine, because it's not only, for these countries across Ukraine, but Ukraine also needs their support. If they're stable enough, if the war is not touching them, then they can back Ukrainians in terms of humanitarian assistance, in terms of sheltering them, accepting refugees, and political and even probably military support. But if they get involved in war, then that will be, unfortunately, the peak of game and a very dangerous game.
Oh, good.
Jeremy, Stock Talk Specials, any updates?
The most of the live feeds now on the major media sources are kind of like moved on to just repetitive stuff, but there's still Ukrainian and Russian sources that are reporting stuff. It's just a lot of the same explosions, gunfire, the same stuff we've been hearing about. I mean, if there's anything in specific, I'll update you, but I haven't seen anything yet. But there's a ton of people tweeting about it.
Hey, Stock Talk. Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yep.
I think earlier you were sharing the importance of not sharing information of going to your nearest XYZ and these steps that these people. I'm seeing
Yeah, I'm seeing a
100K
lot of the
accounts.
same.
I'm seeing these 100K accounts tweet, "Hey, go to X place if you're in this situation or if you're this type of citizen." Can you just put that warning out again? I think we have 2 listeners here for this type of information to be shared.
Yeah, so for those who are maybe new, who didn't hear me say this earlier, it is vital that, I don't want to say vital because obviously some of it might be legit, but it is vital to understand that some of the evacuation routes or safe zones that are being spread on Twitter may not be coming from legitimate sources. They could be coming from Russian sources, or even now that Belarus is involved, Belarusian sources, or Russian hackers, or what. I mean, there's a number of sources. Social media can be used as a tool very easily. So don't see something like that, and the good person in many of you may think, oh, by tweeting this out, I can help people get to safety by spreading the word. Because a lot of these messages are being tweeted out, evacuation routes, and at the bottom of the tweet, it says, please share so that people can get to safety, right? If these are being spread by the wrong sources, it may endanger people or worse, get people killed. So you have to be very careful in a time of literally could become a world war, what is now an official war between two sovereign countries. You have to be very careful of providing advice to people who are on the ground in that war. It's one thing to be reporting on things that you're hearing. It's another thing to provide advice to people who are on the ground there, because they may be looking to social media for advice, whether or not they should be. And so, kind of fueling that narrative, you have to be very careful because some of it could be misinformation. So, for those of you who are sharing those tweets, I've seen a ton of them. Like Rahul said, he's seen a ton of them. It's troubling to see that because people may be taking that advice and maybe endangering themselves further by doing that. So just be careful.
And as many of you know, we've already shared this. None of us are foreign policy experts, but a lot of what we've been trying to do for, I think, multitude of hours now today already is just share information that's as closely related to factual or reported from credible resources. So.
Hey, so I got a NATO expert who's coming in, another NATO expert in addition to Mohammed, who's going to come in here in a few minutes and talk to us about all this.
Can we actually get him up? We're having a hard time getting speakers up here.
Yeah, no, she's ready to talk. She'll be here in I don't know.
No. I know. I'm just saying, Jeremy, are you able to actually get the like Twitter is being buggy? I think.
Yeah, this ex-U.S. intelligence guy is really knowledgeable on this topic, and we've been DMing for the past couple hours now, and I'm
Can
even
you
trying.
share anything, Jeremy, that he's told you? Can you just verbally talk about it?
Yeah, mostly the point I was mentioning on NATO's integrity being put to question here, unlike it ever has before. I think he's really emphasizing that, and potentially does see like some retaliation just due to the fact that I think Putin really has the upper hand here. He has all the leverage on his side. I mean, I'm not anyone to call materializations during this timeline, but it's something we got to watch. As Stock Doc said, it's a war between two sovereign nations. Need to see how the rest of the world reacts.
From Russia right now, so
Yeah, I mean, with obviously the air attack, and then sea, and now the infantry. I mean, those 190,000 soldiers were on the border for a reason. So that's kind of